We also have Ghana Remembers, and we go down memory lane, bring some of the stories that have not yet been resolved or seen any conclusion as yet, but because of the events of the days gone by, we tend to forget about them. We'll remind you and ask that something be done about it. So stay with us for that one. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
Six persons have drowned in the Afram River whilst in a boat crossing to a farmland at Azijikope in the Kwewu Afram Plain South District. Rescue efforts are still underway for a sixth body. Assemblyman for the Jata electoral area, Johnson Aglesinya, confirmed the figures. 6 other persons were rescued alive. The victims were part of 12 persons who have been hired to work on a farm across the Afram River. On Wednesday evening, without life jackets, they traveled on a boat on a transit journey hoping to reach their destination on Thursday morning before the drowning incident occurred. Although water levels have receded, the Afram River volumes are still high and could drown any boat with the least technical challenge. NADMO officials and residents close to the Afram Lake engaged in the rescue efforts. Government has approved the release of 4 million Ghana cedis to clear the indebtedness of the Kolebu Renal unit, which until recently had been closed to outpatients. Health Minister, speaking in Parliament on Thursday, said government was also reviewing contracts it had entered into with suppliers of consumables for the treatment of kidney diseases.
To forestall the recurrence of this unfortunate situation, the Ministry, in collaboration with Kolebu and the Minister of Finance, considering one of the following options: the possible inclusion of dialysis on the National Health Insurance Benefit Package, the granting of subsidies based on proposal received from Kolebu, and the possible review of the tariffs to ensure sustainability of the services.
The Member of Parliament for Dadekotopon, Rita Odole Soa, has passionately appealed to the First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, to intervene for the reconstruction of the La General Hospital, which was demolished 3 years ago. According to the Member of Parliament, residents of La and adjoining communities are suffering because accessing healthcare has become difficult.
We don't believe them anymore. We don't trust the government anymore because it's like they are politicking with the health and the lives of the good people of Dadekotopon. So they should come clean. They promised to reconstruct it in 2 years. That was from 2020, 2021, 2022. They were supposed to hand over the facility. No foundation has been dug. Are they going to start because elections is around the corner in 2024? And we know that when they start, they cannot finish.
The first Deputy Speaker of Parliament has directed the Committee on Lands, Forestry and Mines and Energy to conduct a probe into the leasehold agreements which authorized Electrochem Ghana to embark on the salt mining in Adan. Reports of brutalities of some Adan and Segei residents have drawn MPs to bring the matter to Parliament.
The natural resource is supposed to be for the state, but here are indigents living by this natural resource, feeding on it. Yes, it belongs to the state, but the state says I'm giving it to somebody else without regards to these other indigents. I'll direct the Minister for Interior to brief the House about the incident. After that brief, if there's a need for the Committee of Defense and Interior to look further, we will give the appropriate direction.
Lawyers of Member of Parliament for Asen North have condemned the Criminal Court 3 of the Accra High Court's decision to proceed with the trial of James Jachikwason in his absence after they notified the court on the reason for his absence. Justice Marianzo had on November 3 cautioned that if the legislator and his counsel failed to make themselves available for the hearing, Jachikwason would be tried in absentia.
Unfairness to insist on such an important case. We are doing cross-examination, and you said that you accept the process today. Go ahead.
Should we
and
take
that is the side of it, especially when there's evidence of medical condition. We don't necessarily say that the person maybe he's sick on a wheelchair before you say he's sick. All of us working here, do we know what is with us here?
Well, there's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. Now, the West African Examinations Council earlier released the provisional results for both schools, that's private candidates, and also those who sat for the BECE mainstream. That's this year's Basic Education Certificate examinations. Now, I'll give you highlights of that statement, especially with respect to the statistics. Now, take a look. According to the West African Examinations Council's statement earlier today, a total of 600,900 candidates comprising 300,404 males and 300,496 females. So you have a lot more females than males sitting for this year's BECE from 18,993 participating schools entered for the examination. Now, take a look at this. It includes 53 candidates with visual impairment, 366 with hearing impairment, and 54 candidates with other special educational needs. Now, the examination was conducted at 2,137 centers across the country. Out of the total number, 3,366 candidates were absent. And the BECE for private candidates also recorded a total entry of 1,839 candidates, made up of 942 males and 897 females. Now, what essentially has happened now with the issues relating to the malpractices that occurred during this particular BECE, and that's the element of concern for the many people, especially with the Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asari. And later we'll tell you why this is a major takeaway for them, coming on the back of what we here at Media General did earlier today. And that's where the issue is. Now, take a look at this. The WAEC gave details of the statistics related to the examination malpractice, and the situation is not getting any better. That's the picture that they painted in this. Now, take a look at what they put out there earlier today, specifically indicating that cancellation of entire results of 41 school candidates and 1 private candidate for possession of mobile phones in the exam hall. That's for BECE. Withholding of subject results of 180 candidates and 4 private candidates for various suspected offenses, and then also withholding of entire results of 110 school candidates and 2 private candidates for various suspected offenses, plus the scripts of 22,270 candidates in certain subjects are being scrutinized for reported cases of mass cheating. Take the number, 22,270 candidates. The scripts are being withheld and scrutinized for reported cases of mass cheating. That's what's happening right now. And so keep this in mind, and we'll come back to it later on Ghana Tonight. But coming up next, government approves funds to clear the 4 million cedi debt owed by the Kolebu Teaching Hospital Renal dialysis unit. But does this solve the problem associated with access to dialysis services at the facility for good? The emphasis being on for good. We have a conversation tonight. Now, earlier today, the Health Minister, Kukwaju Mameno, was in Parliament earlier today, indicating that government has approved through the Finance Ministry the release of 4 million cedis to clear the indebtedness of the Kolebu Renal unit, which until recently had been closed to outpatients. Now, the Health Minister indicated today that government was also reviewing contracts it had entered into with suppliers of consumables for the treatment of kidney diseases. That's what's happening. Take a look. We'll recall the minister's submission earlier today in Parliament, and will be joined shortly on the telephone by Dr. Sebastian Sandari, who is a member of the Health Committee of Parliament as well, to take his thoughts on this particular issue and what happened in Parliament earlier today. But this is what the minister said. Take a look.
The Minister for Finance has just approved the disbursement of this 4 million to support our patients in Kolebu. Way forward. To forestall the recurrence of this unfortunate situation, The ministry, in collaboration with Kolebu and the Minister of Finance, is considering one of the following options: the possible inclusion of dialysis on the National Health Insurance Benefit Package, the granting of subsidies based on proposal received from Kolebu, and the possible review of the tariffs to ensure sustainability of the services. A local team has been trained to provide these services, transplantation services, at reduced cost, and have already undertaken the first few kidney transplantations successfully in country by our Ghanaian doctors. Mr. Speaker, I believe this is the beginning of the government's vision of making Ghana a hub for medical.
Well, so that's the Minister of Health earlier today in Parliament, giving details of exactly what the development is with respect to this rather unfortunate situation because of the closure of the outpatients department of this renal unit. We understand, according to the patients, 19 people living with kidney diseases died between May and the 7th of November, just this Monday when this unit was opened, because of this 4 million cedis debt that the renal unit owed. They had to shut down the OPD. Now, these were the concerns of the persons living with kidney diseases. Take a look at this. And earlier, the concerns that they put out, specifics are that, one, they are unable to deal with the issues related to the cost of this dialysis. That's what they put out earlier today. Now take a look at this. They also talked about issues relating to how that is going to impact on their health and the access to it. 19 persons living with kidney diseases died between May 2023 and November 7, 2023, when the Kolebu renal unit shut down. They also say they cannot afford the proposed increase in fees from current 380 cedis to the 765 Ghana cedis. And also they made mention about advocacy that the cost of dialysis treatment should be absorbed under the National Health Insurance Scheme. And we're getting to know today that just 15 dialysis machines are the Kolebu renal unit, and you have almost 300 people going there to get dialysis care. Dr. Sebastian Sandara is Member of Parliament for the Dafiama Bosie Isa constituency. He's a member of the Health Committee of Parliament. He's joining us. Honorable, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. First off, earlier today, the Minister of Health indicated that aside these 15 dialysis machines at Kolebu, 45 of them are expected to arrive sometime soon. Did he give you specifics as to the timelines of when these 45 dialysis machines are expected to arrive in this country?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. The minister did not really indicate timelines as to when these 45 dialysis machines would be delivered to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. And in any case, it's also tied to the agreement or the review of the contract with SMC, and which we see as very, very unfortunate because, see, we are dealing with an emergency, a situation that is leading to loss of lives, and therefore it must be addressed as an emergency issue instead of the long talk without action that we have seen from government. Because this issue of Kolebu Teaching Hospital is not something that we are discussing today. It has been there for weeks, and therefore all we expect is government to show leadership, the Ministry of Health, to act boldly and not through the giving promises, because the whole minister's statement was more of promises instead of taking action to ensure that more dialysis machines are delivered. We take action that will enable these vulnerable clients to afford to have access to healthcare as renal, patients.
Okay. Dr. Sandari, so, I mean, this is not the first time we're hearing a promise of dialysis machines coming in. In fact, it became a manifesto promise at a point that dialysis machines will be procured and so on. So, since you're saying there are no timelines to this announcement by the health minister, what are you, a member of the health committee or the health committee in Parliament, going to do to ensure that you push for timelines so we get to know exactly when these 45 dialysis machines are coming in?
We take these issues as a very important and, in fact, a priority for the health committee and for Parliament. So we expect quick action and we expect quick results. If we don't see that, especially by next week, if we don't see any concrete action from government, we will continue to put pressure on government and on the Minister for Health to ensure that the right thing is done, because the more we talk, the more we delay, we are losing more lives. So far, about 19 patients have lost their lives, and that is even what has been documented. The rest that are losing their lives, and we are not aware of them. Nobody, is talking about them. So what we are discussing is just the tip of the iceberg. And for now, it is Kolebu. The scenario is about Kolebu. Tomorrow, it might be Konfanoche Teaching Hospital, it might be Keiko Teaching Hospital, it might be, Ho Teaching Hospital or Tamal Teaching Hospital, or a case in my own regional hospital, Enwa. So we want a holistic approach that will address the issue of dialysis machine in this country. And that's one of the things the minister failed to show, because his statement was just limited to Kolebu. But it should go beyond Kolebu. So after Kolebu, what next? Should we continue to watch patients die? No. So as Parliament, as members of the Health Committee, we think that this is a serious matter. It is not one of those areas that should be propaganda. We expect results.
Right. But now Kolebu has written to you, Parliament, to expedite action on their request to have the fees of 380 cedis per dialysis session increased to the 765, which was earlier published. The persons living with kidney diseases are saying that they cannot even afford the 380 cedis current charge. There's a company that's taking up the cost. So if you increase this to 765, it's almost as a death sentence to them. So what is Parliament going to consider in this request that Kolebu has made of you in that statement that I'm sure you have seen?
Yeah. Parliament will consider the interests of the patients first. We'll consider the interests of our constituents, those suffering from renal disease, and especially those on dialysis. They are saying that even the 380 for now is difficult for many of them to afford, even per week. Multiply 380 by 4 weeks in a month, and even depending on the number of sessions. That tells you the magnitude of money that these vulnerable clients would have to pay. Right. So in considering Kolebu's request or appeal, we will put the patient first. I would argue that if the patients cannot afford even 380, why increase the amount that they are demanding? Why increase from 380 to almost 700? So it is going to be a serious consideration. If the people cannot afford, then government should come in to intervene. I mean, if a benevolent or a philanthropist like First Sky Group can come in to support these clients to pay. Why can't government come in either to subsidize or to find immediate measures that will ensure that these clients have access to quality health care? And
Right.
that is the whole essence of universal health coverage. That every client, every Ghanaian found anywhere in this country should be able to have access to quality health care without the burden of financial, payment or whatever. That is universal health coverage.
Right.
So if the people cannot afford, government should come in with interventions that will enable them have access to dialysis while we think of the long-term
solution
measures. And one of the areas we are saying that why should government cap national health insurance when we have some of these issues?
Right. Dr. Sebastian Sandari, I thank you. And this is something that we're going to be monitoring how things play out in Parliament, especially with this request by Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. Honorable Sebastian Sandari is a member of Parliament for Defiame, Bosie Issa constituency. He is a member of the Health Committee of Parliament on this. But coming up next year on Ghana Tonight, we'll take you back 9 years ago when the Supreme Court ordered the state to retrieve 51.2 million cedis from businessman Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome. How much has been retrieved so far and how much is outstanding? I'm going to tell you here on Ghana Tonight. You know, a number of things happen on a daily basis. The news cycle is swift, loaded, and sometimes very fast. And so some of these things slips under the radar. But we are going to go back into time on Ghana Remembers to keep asking the questions of when closure will be brought to some of these cases for the greater good. So 9 years after the Supreme Court ordered the state to retrieve 51.2 million cedis from businessman Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome,
since they involved international companies and hence required parliamentary approval, a view businessman Alfred Woyome disagreed with.
I am not from Azerbaijan, as I've been saying. I'm a Ghanaian. Article 181 is not meant for me. It's not meant for any Ghanaian. A Ghanaian, you do business with your government. Nobody is expecting that the things to be affected by Article 181. It has been defined. That Article 181 has been explained by the Supreme Court, although they are not supposed to do that.
The Attorney General has since 2014 filed multiple legal processes in an attempt to seize cash contained in a businessman's bank account and also sell some properties belonging to him. The sold properties are 2 houses at Trasacco Valley Estates. The auctioneer, however, could not find any buyer for the properties. He therefore applied to National Security to consider purchasing the houses. The National Security paid 8.3 million and 5.5 million cedis for the properties. The Office of Attorney General says it is following various leads to recover the outstanding 32.7 million cedis.
So this is just the first in the series of recalls that we're going to be on here on TV3. So stay with us on this path. Martin Pebo is private legal practitioner, is joining us. Lawyer, thank you so much for joining us on Ghana Tonight. Now, the wheels of justice in this Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome versus the Republic of Ghana's case has really been grinding so slow. 9 years on, we're talking about just a little over 80 million cedis recovered. So really, are you concerned as a private legal practitioner as much as we, members of the general public, are concerned about this particular case?
Yeah, so it must be of concern to all of us. And indeed, it is of concern to us because, we all must fight with our last breath to be able to preserve the property of Ghana, to be able to make sure that public resources are not dissipated wantonly. Okay, so this Woyome case, and let's reiterate, that's a civil one. That's a civil case involving Alfred Woyome, Waterville, and the other companies. it's that one that the Supreme Court held that the money must be refunded, the 50-something million, right? And with time, interest. That's where the Supreme Court held that that money must be refunded. For the criminal case, Mr. William won, right? Good. So we are also aware that the Attorney General, current Attorney General, made some efforts, and eventually they were able to recover a bit of money. It wasn't much, I mean, compared to the total judgment debt. And so this is a good time for the Attorney General to apprise the general public about what further efforts have been made to be able to recover the balance of the money. Because, you know, it's in the context of people dying because they cannot have access to the renal unit of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. So I can say it breaks my heart that 19 persons are said to have died because the renal unit owes about 4 million Ghana cedis. And for over a month, since the advisor on health issues, Dr. Nsiasare, promised that the government was about to pay, or is it the president who was about to pay the $4 million? And 1 month on, still that money hadn't been paid, etc. So if you look at it, you see that to the extent that every pesewa counts in Ghana, we should make every effort to recover the balance of the money from Mr. Alfred.
I see. But Martin Bebo, I mean, take a look at this. 9 years on, Alfred Abwesiwame still owes the state, per the details of this case, as we played earlier, 32.7 million cedis. And it's been a while. We haven't even had any updates from the Attorney General on this matter. Is it because of the kind of people or the person involved in this case and the interests at play? That's how come this case is playing out the way we are seeing it?
It's a mixture of all of those reasons. Yeah, a combination, or we can say a mixture, right? Yeah, sometimes it's good to expand the English language. Yeah, it's a combination of all. You know, these things happen, but perhaps we haven't also added the citizenry. We are also a part. And it's heartwarming that you raised TV3, you've raised this matter at this point, because all of us have gone to sleep. We've forgotten about it. You say it. So where citizens themselves are not vigilant, this is what happens. And a lot of the problems that we face, you see that quite a sizable part of the blame also goes to citizens. We are too timid. We don't seem to care too much about fighting for the public interest. It's all about everybody for himself and his nuclear family. Even when a few decades ago, you would even say the extended family, but now the nuclear family. So we're getting too individualistic. Meanwhile, from our history, we're communal people, but we've gotten so westernized to the extent that now we are very individualistic. And so once the people who know that we should be chasing Mr. Woyomi are rather enjoying, they are making good money in government and they are comfortable, they are not interested in pursuing that fight. So it's for the downtrodden and the rest of the citizenry to continue to push people in government to hold them accountable so that they would go after Mr. Woyomi to recover the balance.
I see. So the clarion call here is to the Attorney General to give an update on this case, correct? Finally, quickly, before we go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the first step that has to be taken so that we would know where he's gotten to. And then, of course, if we can support by way of public advocacy, we support. And naturally, that should get him going.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight on this matter. And just to recall that this is a segment that's going to run through all our news bulletins, Ghana Remembers, so that you would also have the opportunity every step of the way to get a recall of some of the issues that we've glossed over because of the passage of time and issues, and they have still not had closure, to the detriment of all of us. But coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, Ghana misses November 1 timeline for the received of the second tranche of funds from the International Monetary Fund as debt restructuring negotiations with external creditors drags. I mean, so what are the implications for the economy? We're going to be finding out shortly on this. And we went onto the IMF's own site, and there's a document which they published some time ago giving details of the specific timelines to the disbursement of the $3 billion that's funding the support that we're getting from this program. Now, it's still in talks as we speak. Ghana is in talks with the external creditors for the debt relief worth $10.5 billion. That's the total of our external debt that we intend to restructure. There's been a submission of proposals to the commercial creditors seeking a haircut of up to 40% and additional debt rework with its bilateral creditors, including China and the Paris Club. I'm going to show you what the finance minister said, but let me take you through the specific timelines as we have it, as was earlier published by the IMF for the disbursement of this $3 billion. It has dates and the action that should have been taken for the $600 million to be released. Take a look at this. In May, we received the first $600 million because we got a board approval for the extended credit facility. On November 1, you recall that the IMF team with Stefan de Mission, they were in town observing the end of the June performance criteria, and they gave their own feedback, good responses by the IMF. But then again, we had to complete our negotiations with the external creditors for the reduction of our external debts. It's the external debt reduction that is now lagging because we haven't reached an agreement with our external creditors, both bilateral and multilateral creditors. That is what is pending. And the finance minister is quoted that they have to take between 30 to 40% haircut, and they are not taking it. Let's take a look at this. After November 1, the next date should have been May 1, 2024, where there's an observance of end of December 2023 performance criteria, completion of the second review. That's when they'll release $360 million of the $3 billion. Then on November 1, 2024, they will review the end of June 2024 performance criteria and the completion of the third review. Then another $360 million will be released. Then on May 1, 2025, another $360 million will be disbursed. Then October 1, 2025, another $360 million of the $3 billion will be disbursed after we've fulfilled the condition. Then on April 16, 2026, the final disbursement of $360 million is expected, all things being over. That is if we fulfill the conditions attached to the disbursement. So it's not automatic that the various tranches will come in. We have to fulfill certain conditions. And it is one of them that has not been fulfilled, which has stalled the disbursement of the next tranche of $600 million from the IMF. And that is the fact that we haven't reached agreement with our external creditors. This is what the finance minister said. Take a look at this. He says, based on his engagements and also so far the meetings and the proposals to the creditor committee, in our indicative scenario, the restructuring terms for bondholders involve maybe a nominal haircut between 30 to 40%, looking at maybe coupons of not more than 5% and final maturities of not more than 20 years are sort of the contours of what they are discussing and analyzing. So that's what the finance minister gave indication of the kind of conversations they are having with the external creditors as we speak. And to many, that's what is leading to this delays that we're seeing. And Professor John Gachi is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. He's joining us. And I want to thank Professor Peter Cotti as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana. I'll start off with you, Professor John Gachi, on this. Now, with this delay and the missing of the timelines we're seeing as per the timetable published by the IMF for this release. In your view, what's causing this delay in the second tranche of disbursement, especially, and the agreement with the external creditors?
Well, the delay is occasioned by the inability of the government of Ghana and the creditors to agree on what is required of them. The government of Ghana is pleading with the creditors to accept a certain elongation of maturity of the debt, and some cuts, about 30 to 40% or so, on the interest or the coupon that they expect. And that is where the disagreement is coming from. As things are, it seems part of the creditors, such as bilateral and multilateral, are sort of very soft, but it was also indicated that some creditors are excluded from the debt exchange program, so they will not be affected. And it's very difficult for the commercial creditors to see a chunk of the interest wiped away. And I believe that is where the disagreement is, and they have not come to terms yet. And that is why we couldn't meet that target. And it's a fundamental requirement of the IMF program.
Right, but so you suspect that it is the 30 to 40% haircut on their investment in coupons that the external creditors are not happy with, and that's what has delayed this agreement with them. They are not willing to take the 30 to 40% haircut the finance minister is talking about. Professor Gachi.
Exactly so. That is what is delaying the entire process. Because if the terms proposed by the government of Ghana is acceptable to creditors, especially commercial creditors, then that would have been a done deal. But since there is no common ground, they need to negotiate their way through. And of course, the creditors are seeing themselves that you have attracted us with a certain level of environment. We agree to give our money to you. We expect you to pay. You have been paying. Then all of a sudden, you have stopped paying. You need to explain to us for us to be convinced whether what you are asking for we should give you or not. And the government of Ghana has not been able to convince them. And one thing we need to bear in mind is that external creditor agreement on debt restructuring is not the same as debt restructuring in the domestic setting, where the government can use all kinds of tactics and strategies to get the investors or bondholders agree to the position of the government. Mm-hmm. That is not the same. If you do that, you will crash.
Professor Peter Korte, let me bring you in. He's a director of the Institute for Statistical Social Economic Research at the University of Ghana, Legon. Professor Peter Korte, so from your perspective, how concerning is this 30 to 40% haircuts that the finance minister is talking about, and especially with the impact that it could have from your perspective on external investors and how things are playing out?
Well, you know, we've reached a point where this has to be done, but I think the rate is quite high, and also if investors are going to lose 40% of their principal, that might affect our future engagement. So in the immediate future, if anybody wants to invest in Ghana, that investor might rethink about the possibility of a future default, and also the possibility of losing quite a significant proportion of the principal. So in as much as I agree that we have to restructure our debt, we need to bring our debt to sustainable levels, I think the rate is quite high and might certainly affect investor confidence going forward.
And could there have been other alternatives because of the impact you talk about, the possible impact on external investor confidence? Could there have been other alternatives considered by the finance minister as against this 30 to 40% haircut that has been proposed?
Well, at the moment, perhaps a restructuring to a longer term where they could be paid, but just like it was done with the domestic debt exchange, or even if they're to suffer a haircut, it might be a lower rate plus some reduction in interest or interest rate, a cut on the interest rate rather than such a high rate on the principal. I think that is quite high. But I hope and believe that this has been negotiated very well with the external creditor or the Eurobond holders. Otherwise, it might send a very wrong and strong signal for future investors.
Professor Peter, appreciate it. And Professor Gachi, before I let you go as well, it might seem evident, but what are some of the possible implications of a further delay of this $600 million disbursement as we speak?
It means that we will not get the funds in the first place. The things we have earmarked the funds to do will not be done. It may put pressure on the currency, especially in the last quarter, that we expect Christmas activity demand for Christmas. Items into the country would need support of dollar or pounds to import the items to the country. That will be the demand pressure on the currency. And then again, we do know the expectation of the syndicated loan is also having problems. Therefore, all the support for the currency may not be available, and that will make the currency fragile, especially getting to the end of the last quarter.
And I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Professor John Gachi is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. Thank you. And to you, Professor Peter Kortey, he's a director of the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research at the University of Ghana, Legon. Thank you, gentlemen. Coming up next year on Ghana Tonight, embattled former Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapaah is in the news again. She's in court again, seeking an injunction against the special prosecutor to restrain him from further investigating her. I'm going to tell you her reasons right after this quick break. Stay with us.